Okay, for my sixth favorite player to care. Yeah, start again. Okay, for my sixth favorite player. Okay.
You have failed me for the last time.
Round 2. Fight!
Hey everyone, Genome here, coming to you with my next top 10 video in my Marvel Strike Force series. Right now everyone's talking about the new Battle Pass and Jubilee and all that, so you've already heard it all, there's no sense reiterating it. Besides, my channel's a little more focused toward the newer player or the newly minted mid-game player or free-to-play player, and those players are not probably getting Jubilee this go-round, unless of course they're paying, so... It is good to prep for that stuff, and I have some very mixed feelings about real-time arena and all that, but we'll get into that in another video. Today I want something a little more of a lighthearted affair, and I want to talk about something a little more ephemeral too, and that is my top 10 favorite characters to play as, and by that I mean the most fun characters to play as. These are not necessarily the best characters in the game, of course. Some of them are really good, some of them are not used at all in top-end play. It's just that I think these characters either bring a really fun mechanic to the table, or they require a lot of strategy to play as. So I'm going to go ahead and give these in top 10 format. Really, a lot of these are interchangeable, and fun is definitely subjective, but here we go. Let's start out. Alright, so for my number 10 pick, I'm going with Corvus Glaive. I find Corvus very fun to play with because his kit works, of course, best on Black Order, but you can use him in raids and other things too. He's definitely not bad at all. And what I like about him is every one of his abilities requires some thinking, especially in arena. But let's forget about his team right now and just go with his kit. So I'm not going to talk about his passive, but really, what's really good, and especially if you teamed up with Proxima, his basic actually strips buffs, right? It's very powerful, so sometimes it makes more sense to use that than it would his ultimate, right? His ultimate hits multiple characters, and it does extra damage against stealth things, or when he's in stealth, and it can hit pretty big, but basically it's just a mini adjacent AoE, but it's not always best to open with that, which makes him a compelling character. And of course, his special, which is basically a targeted nuke, but you gotta be careful about the target. A lot of times, especially in arena, you'll be going up against a Phoenix team, and usually she's the lowest health character when this rolls around, so you really don't want to use it on that, so you have to be very strategic with it. But it's very useful because it ignores taunt, ignores stealth. He's just like a kind of a good jack of all trades, and he fits in very well. He's much like a controller, actually, as much as he is like a damage dealer, which I like that kind of hybridization. So my number 10 pick is Corvus Glaive. Alright, for my number 9 pick, I'm going to go with Carnage. Carnage himself as a standalone character is not that interesting. You know, all his magic happens on a symbiote team, or at least with 2 other symbiotes, but his kit is cool because it makes you really ponder what to do. Sometimes you may be wanting to nuke down a high priority target, or try to, but he may be up in the green. And then you have another character, maybe of lesser importance, on the other side of the field, or even close by, doesn't matter, who is in the yellow. And if he gets down to the red, then Carnage's passive is going to go off. We're going to give all kinds of speed up and heals and all that. It's huge. So a lot of times you have to do the risk-reward kind of stuff with him, which I think makes for a compelling character. His basic is really good. You gotta remember when to use that. And when you use his basically execute move as well, his special, you have to actually really think about it. It's like you have to make sure it's going to kill somebody, because a lot of times on team, especially when you got a full symbiote team going, there's a ton of buffs on a character you're going aiming this at. But if you use this and don't kill the victim, shall I say, you just take all those negative buffs off them. So there's a lot of risk rewarded in using that. So you have to be very methodical and strategic when you use his special, especially. But I just like it. He preys upon characters that are getting weak. And I think it's very fitting and kind of thematic, too, for the character. So my number 9 pick is Carnage. Alright, for my number 8 pick, I'm going with Magneto. This basically just completely revolves around his ultimate. Everyone knows it, everyone's seen it. Polar Vortex, or Magnetic Vortex, Polar Vortex, I'm thinking of Chicago, right? You know, just it brings everybody into the field within like 2 steps closer to each other. So basically, you turn them into a giant softball.
What the hell kind of an analogy is that?
Right, and that allows Brotherhood, especially, to just start shredding them with AoEs that are just adjacent normally. And so it turns it into a full AoE attack. It's a huge hugely important to the team. In fact, that's the only reason it functions is because of that. Not to mention everything else he brings to the table. But really, he'd be on this list solely for this because it's so satisfying, and there's no other mechanic like it in the game that does that. Plus, you're throwing out blinds. So, you know, fighting the AI, they never play around this, right? So you open up with this, and they start blowing their ultimates right away, and most of the time those things miss. So it's a great little ability, and his special is very good too. Just drop down 2 turns, throw it on a tank, and forget it. They're out of the game. So it's he's got a fun kit. He's not as useful as he used to be, of course, but it's very satisfying, and that makes Magneto my number 8 most favorite character to play as. All right, for my number 7 pick, I'm going with one that's maybe a little bit oddball, right, for most people, and that's Graviton. I love playing as Graviton because he is very strategic as well. He seems cookie cutter at first, right? Yeah, you always open up with his special, and then you always hit the next move with his ultimate, right, to try to first stun. And then you follow it up with a couple of basics and repeat. He's not like that. He's much more strategic than a lot of people give him credit for. AIM is all about debuffing, right? And he preys especially hard on debuff characters. And while it is very good usually to open up with his special, because it's hits adjacent and it puts bleeds everywhere, kind of keeping in theme with the whole AIM team, it's not always the case. Sometimes it's better to stun right out the gate, right? And you can stun a tank or something before they get a taunt up. You know, there's lots of different ways to play him. And the really cool thing, and it does big damage, he's the only guy that does any real damage, appreciable damage on AIM, by the way, too, just so you know. So he's a must-have for AIM. But there's a lot of strategy that goes into knowing when to use his basic, because his basic can be lethal as heck, depending on how many negative effects the enemy has on them, right? So sometimes it's actually better to use his basic than, say, an ultimate, because if they're like half health but have like 4 debuffs on them, it might just nuke them. So he's a very strategic character, and not to mention there's also some strategy to use with his passive as well, dropping him down to a certain level. So sometimes it's better to get a couple characters down to below 50% health rather than focus one down, because then you extend everything that's on them by 1. If they have like 4 debuffs on them, that's going to be game over, right? So I think he's a very strategic character, doesn't get enough credit, and it's too bad he's not a little bit better on other teams, because I would like to play with him and with other characters more. But Graviton is my pick for number 7. Okay, for the 6th most fun character to play as, for me, it is Starlord. And this is almost exclusively in raids. I don't really use him in raids anymore, or in DD2, or wherever you want to throw him in, whatever dark dimension. But you got to think very carefully about every one of his moves. Most of the time, probably 90% of the time, you're going to be starting out with his ultimate, all right? But that's where it gets tricky after that, because he is an energy battery first and foremost, right? And that's his main reason for being on basically any team. But he's got a lot of utility in his basic and in his special especially, right? Because you have to, once again, risk reward, I'm going to be saying that a lot in this little video, but sometimes you'll have an opportunity to either kill a character or maybe take out 2 characters that are adjacent, right? Because his basic always chains. So a lot of times you are wanting to throw out his special on the next turn or whatever turn you're on, to get some energy going to whoever's behind you, right, or adjacent to you. But then you gotta think, well, would it be better to just kill these guys rather than feed energy to the character? So you're always thinking about the moves. And then later on, you gotta start thinking, all right, especially with his special, like a lot of characters are immune to blind, like Daredevil, just for one, like Rhino, getting down to it. I mean, there's a lot of characters that can deal with the blind. You're not gonna bother them. Like especially, and sometimes their ultimate never misses or special never misses, you know what I'm talking about. So you got to know when to throw this out there too, when it's actually going to be useful, or sometimes you just use it for the energy. So you got to sometimes not even bother holding it. So it's a very, very strategic like character to use. In fact, he might be the most strategic character like in raids and in Dark Dimension and all that, just because you got to think about every one of his moves and then maybe go in and execute there. But yeah, that makes him, I think, incredibly fun to play as. That makes him my number 6 pick for most fun player character. Okay, so for my number 5 most fun character to play as, I'm going with Pyro. Pyro is a lot like Graviton in the fact that a lot of what he does takes considerable thought. He is not a set it and forget it character, no matter what a lot of people say, and there's a lot of nuance to him. you wind up using your basic a lot more on him than you would think, and it's not always opening with the special, which is amazing. That's a very, very powerful tool because it strips buffs, a couple buffs from enemies, usually taunt or defense up, and that's when you want to use that. And of course, if Magneto's still alive, you're going to strip up everything. So it's incredibly powerful. And then you got to remember, they're all probably going to be clumped up because of Magneto too. So it's a huge, huge, most important move he has is his special, right? But you got to know when to use it. So you don't always pop off on this in the first turn. Now it looks like you would because you throw a couple bleeds on him, right? And that is important. But sometimes it's better to wait a turn for when that guy who throws defense up every time on his first turn that goes after you throws it up, and then you're going to be doing a lot more damage because you waited. Same with fire crafting. Sometimes you want to throw this out, before the special, whatever, to stop a tank from taunting or stop someone from going into stealth, whatever the case may be. It's a huge thing, so you don't always use it for the secondary part, by extending bleeds and all that. I mean, it's nice, but I don't know. A lot of times you might open up with the basic, just depending on the team makeup, their speed, and all that. So he's a very strategic character, and he's a bleed machine. I love it. I love everything he does. And then you also got to remember, too, when Magneto's an ally, when his passive kicks in, he throws heal block on stuff. So if you can be strategic enough to use him correctly, you can really stop the team from coming back because they can't heal. And it's horrible. Then you can extend all that, too, on the next turn with firecrafting or something. So he's a very strategic character, probably my favorite character to play as, at least as mutants go. And, he's close. But, just a very strategic character, and I think a really fun one to play. So Pyro is my number 5 choice. All right, so my number 4 choice is going to be Ultron. And for those of you who just unlocked Ultron, first off, congratulations. But Ultron will be the most fun character to play, bar none, for quite a while after you first get him, right? The only thing that knocks him down is after a while you get sick of using him because you use him so much for a while. And then everything starts to get old hat. But Ultron is a juggernaut. He's a monster, especially when you first get him, right? In the mid-game, he's God tier. But most of everything he does is pretty fun, right? First off, you start summoning bots. Almost 99% of the time you start out with his special, right? You start summoning the bot army, and that really starts steamrolling. So unless they actually kill your Ultron, you can just keep making these guys every couple turns, right? Because they're going to start feeding him ability energy, and when he starts killing things, especially with his ultimate, which gets charged up very quickly because of the bots, he's going to get more energy back, and then he's stealing buffs, and they're buffing him, and he just turns into this unstoppable monster, like, very quickly. Like I said, the only thing that makes him not as fun is you just get tired of it because you use it so many times, ad nauseum. But everything he does is pretty cool, even his basic, stealing taunts, not just stripping, but stealing. It's great. Everything he does, and then he reses if you kill him, guaranteed every time. So it's fun. You'll be popping off ultimates like you wouldn't believe, doing big damage. That doesn't slow down till like U7. So great character, real fun one to play as, and he's definitely easily making my top 5, and that's number 4, and that's Ultron. All right, we're getting to the top 3 now. So here we are, number 3 spot. I'm going with Empowered Thanos. So once you get Thanos into a whole Black Order team, he turns automatically into Empowered Thanos. Now, a lot of what he gets is passive, but his entire kit changes. But what he does get as abilities is really fun too, and strategic. It's especially strategic when you're going up Black Order against Black Order teams. You really got to know the opposing teams and how to manipulate it. And it all has to do with his special, of course. But his whole kit's amazing. So, but once you get him empowered, he's going to take turn 1 and I think turn 3. Automatically, he's always going to go first, and he's always going to go like 3rd. So he's going to automatically, almost always, use double basic on his first 2 moves, right? It's huge. It does adjacent damage. It stacks bleeds. It's big damage. It's a great move. And then he's going to be cooling down for a little while, and then probably using his special next, because all that team's going to start debuffing you and doing what they do and buffing themselves, and all of a sudden he just does time shift, and it just turns everything around, turns the clock around, turns all their green red for the most part, unless they're like Colossus or something, and it turns all your team green. Everything that was red on yours turns green. Huge stuff. And then right after he does that, he goes into his pulling the moon and throwing it at you. And it's going to heal him up to full. It's going to do massive damage to the entire team. And it's just cool. And it's really cool is his execute move. Like if everyone or whoever the character he's aiming at is at really low health, he'll just snap them away if it's the last move of the game, and then, you know, there's the whole Infinity Gauntlet thing. It's just fun character to play as. He's strategic. He's not just a battering ram. You really got to think about his moves, once again, especially with Black Order. Versus Black Order. So easily makes the top 5, and he's my number 3 pick. That's Empowered Thanos. Alright, for my number 2 pick, it's going to be Mr. Sinister. There's no denying the fun of this character. The cloning mechanic is maybe the most unique in the entire game. It fits him thematically from the books. It's just fun overall. He's a great character overall, period. I mean, everyone knows that. But it's clone. It's all about clone that makes this guy. And it's so interesting to take a look at the other team and figure out who you want to steal. Now, sometimes you got to be strategic with it. Once again, everyone on this list requires some strategy, right? For the most part. Or at least play as effectively. But it's really important with Sinister because a lot of time your team that you're going against, there may be some characters you don't want. Like, I don't want that Hulk that's over there, or I don't want that She-Hulk, or whatever, you know? But they're the ones taunting. They might taunt before he gets a turn because he's not exceptionally fast, right? Especially off of Marauder's team and all that. He's not really getting anything from anybody else. So you got to be very selective. So sometimes you don't always start with a clone. Now, usually on the shorter fights, like Arena and Blitz, that sort of thing, yeah, you go for it right away. You got to use it. You can't be sitting on it. But for like longer fights, like say in Raids or War or, you know, some Dark Dimension things, whatever, like things like that, sometimes it behooves you to wait until that taunt drops off the character so you can grab someone more valuable. Like, I'd rather have an enemy Falcon than I would an enemy Hulk. Almost every time, right? So sometimes you have to really think about his moves. And then you got to think of when to pop off his special and all that. Or do I, you know, I mean, you may not use that first turn if you don't use your ultimate. You may just use a basic. So he's a very strategic player to play as, or character to play as, and his clone mechanic is just fun. It's just so cool to get another character. And a lot of times, like, especially if you play new events that come out that has, like, maybe a new character on the other side, you can actually clone them and practice playing with them for a while before they're even released to players. So that's kind of cool too. So he has a lot of really cool nuances. He's going to be fun for the foreseeable future in this game, and he easily makes the top 5. And he's actually number 2 and very close to number 1, and that's Mr. Sinister. And alright, for my number 1 pick, it's probably no surprise. For those of you who watch when I do my rating and things, it's going to be Black Bolt. Probably maybe the least strategic character on this team, or on this list, but there is some nuance to him, and really, if the biggest fun for him is actually pairing him up with Thanos to make him ult constantly. This is mostly a raid strategy, but Thanos feeding Black Bolt energy. You can do this with Starlord too, but it works much better with Thanos. So he's doing ult after ult after ult. He becomes a killing machine. His kit is not all that interesting, to be honest with you. He's got single target nuke. I do love his basic. Stripping buffs is amazing and does big damage. Or flipping, you know, it's huge. It's huge. Good way to get through taunts. Like, you see so many Draxes or whatever in raids. This is a good way to get through them. But, of course, you got a nuke that doesn't miss. Good against, like, Spider-Man and Miles and Vision, you know, those dodgy characters. And it's a good execute move, of course. Just one basic, huge damage AoE. It's fun to do over and over and over again, though. But where it makes him fun, and once again, very somewhat strategic, not as much as the other ones, but is his passive, his burp. When he burps and pings off those other opposing players, it's so satisfying. Especially when you like do a big AoE or something, and you see everyone drop down in the red, and then he drops back, and he starts going bing, 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 knocking him down like 9 pins. It's so satisfying. And when you get used to using him in raids, it's very hard not to use him. You start freaking Jones, and it's like, oh my gosh, I want to be using him. Why can't I be using him? Like this whole season character thing right now. But yeah, he's very fun to play as. He's good to use in arena. He's good to use in every game mode. He's an exceptionally strong character, and easily makes my list as the number 1 most fun character to play as, or yeah, play with in Marvel Strike Force. So, what did you think about my list today? Did I leave anyone off that you would have included? Did I make some mistakes in my extrapolations there? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll be sure to answer you, and maybe I'll make some more videos like this coming up in the near future. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this list, and look forward to making more. So until next time, this is Genome, out. Bing, bing, bing.